They're looking for ways to reduce youth violence following the Florida school shooting.
The notion that gun violence has more to do with video game weapons than real ones.
President Trump suggested violent video games are partly to blame for the gun violence epidemic in the U.S.
77% of parents believe media violence, including video games, is contributing to America's culture of violence.
If we're going to claim that video games make guys violent, then we have to accept the next part as well.
You finally got laid properly. That's so sweet.
David, I did it for you.
Do it right now. Come on. Do it. Do it. Do it. No. Do it. No. Stop it.
Okay, what is this?
Why would I say no, Marty? Why? What was I saving myself for? Intimacy from you?
I don't.
Romance books, movies, primetime television, all of them would have to make women sluts and physical abusers. There. Someone finally said it. Now let's break it down. Listen, I'm not going to tell you anything necessarily new here, but I will reinforce what you already know and help give you ways to respond the next time somebody brings up this ridiculous argument. For more than 3 decades, there has been a public narrative that video games make boys and men violent. This narrative has been reported by parents, school counselors, politicians, hell, journalists, religious figures, and activists of all kind, almost to the point of being a cultural reflex. Whenever a young man commits a violent act, particularly a high-profile one, commentators reach out for the same explanation. There must have been violent video games involved. Yet this narrative has continued in spite of mounting evidence to the contrary. And I'm sure most of you are already familiar that nearly all of it has been entirely debunked over the last 2 or 3 decades. But even the best large-scale and methodological careful research has repeatedly found no causal link between playing violent video games and committing real-world violence. Hell, cultures with some of the highest consumption of video games, such as Japan and South Korea, they have some of the lowest violent crime rates among men on the planet. And what this shows is that the story was never about the data. It was a cultural story about who we are allowed to blame. I think to understand how this story took root, we need to look at how society has needed explanations for male aggression. When a man becomes violent, we do not want to believe that sometimes people are just pushed beyond their limits by other people and by society. So we create external explanations to let those people and society off the hook. But they'll tell us that a game taught him to be a monster. A game rewired his mind. And this narrative comforts people because it implies that violence is something foreign that can be removed by banning or restricting a product. So blaming video games, or even movies or anything else for that matter, for men's violence allows society to avoid asking real questions about topics like forced fatherlessness, fragmented communities, the rejection of male identity, and women's inability to take accountability for the way that they treat men. It avoids questions of what has actually happened to men. Here's the hypocrisy. If media in any form truly programs behavior to that degree, then we must apply the same standard to women who consume media that glamorizes infidelity, emotional manipulation, and physical violence, even when posed as a punchline. Romance novels, erotica, and films like 50 Shades of Grey, and even The Notebook and Titanic preserve narratives in which women's infidelity and physical violence are seen as morally justified regardless of the relational consequences. If video games supposedly make men violent, then these stories should make women disloyal, impulsive husband beaters. Yet when women act in these ways, we don't blame the book or the movie. We say that she needed to feel seen. She was unfulfilled. We say that she was finding herself. She's being an awesome boss bitch, y'all. And through media news, her behavior becomes emotionally justified instead of morally evaluated. Television and viral content frequently depict women hitting, slapping, or physically humiliating men for humor. And the men in those shows and in those movies always accept it. Because if he defends himself, he's abusive. If he's hurt by her abuse, then he's weak. This normalizes a belief that violence against men does not matter. If we use the same logic as the video game argument, we would have to say that this media teaches women that hitting men is funny because it's acceptable. We would say that it desensitizes women to the seriousness of aggression and physical violence. But society refuses to say that because men are expected to absorb harm. Over the past 30 to 40 years, masculinity has lost its socially honored form. Earlier generations of men were taught that masculinity was tied to being strong and assertive to protect women. But as cultural norms shifted, the narrative moved from refining masculinity to pathologizing it. Male assertiveness then became aggression, as they say, and their authority became oppression. Male leadership became control. Meanwhile, female abusers and infidelity became their empowerment, even when expressed destructively. Being a slut became self-discovery, and this created a huge imbalance. Men are held morally accountable, meanwhile women held emotionally justified. Men must explain themselves, while women must be understood. This shift has reshaped relationships that are having very hard and very real effects today. Men increasingly feeling like they are entering situations in which they must prove that they are safe, that they're emotionally aware and even non-threatening. Yet women are encouraged to maintain standards that center on their fulfillment, even when it's inconsistent. Men must earn trust, women must be validated. The cultural script assumes that men are dangerous until proven otherwise, and women are justified until proven otherwise. Meanwhile, romance erotica that glamorizes manipulation and betrayal is not treated as dangerous because female desire is not viewed as threatening. Yet the collapse of stable relationships, trust, and commitment clearly shows that female desire has cultural power. The selective outrage and blame reveal that the argument was never about media influence or video games. It was always about controlling the narrative of male identity. So if media influences behavior, then it influences everyone. We don't get to be selective about this. If we're going to talk about accountability, it must apply to both genders, not just men. The real issue has never been video games. The real issue is that society has spent decades dismantling the structures that developed healthy masculinity.